So Sean Strickland this last week called for another shot at the title against Dricus Du Plessis, wanting to run it back. And that was an incredible fight, an incredibly close fight. But as much as I feel like he is the most deserving to fight Dricus Du Plessis for that title, I really and truly don't think it's going to happen. And there are a few reasons why. First and foremost, as much as Sean Strickland is a fan favorite, people love that he kind of speaks his mind, he goes off the cuff, he stands up to a lot of these sort of cancel bullies and woke nonsense and all this other kind of stuff. He is a nightmare in terms of sponsors, right? And if he is the middleweight UFC champion, unfortunately, the UFC still is a business, and they are still, to an extent, going to have to explain why they are allowing one of their champions to just go off the cuff and talk about Chinese people or dogs or whatever pops into Sean Strickland's head, right? Because the guy has no filter. He says what's on his mind. And that is refreshing to a lot of people. That is refreshing in a lot of ways, especially when he's calling out some of the woke culture and cancel culture, things like that. A lot of people really do appreciate that. But at the end of the day, UFC is a business. They need to keep their sponsors relatively happy. And unfortunately, Sean Strickland just isn't the guy to do that. However, you do have other people like Dricus Du Plessis, like Israel Adesanya, Robert Whittaker, a lot of the other guys within the middleweight division are a better fit, are a lot more sponsor friendly. And we did have Dricus Du Plessis calling it, saying that he wants to fight Israel Adesanya next. Now, whether or not that happens, whether they give it to Sean, whether they give it to Izzy, I feel like it's probably going to go to Izzy next, right? Sean Strickland and Robert Whittaker, maybe they fight for kind of a title eliminator option. Although, if Whittaker beats Strickland, then and Izzy beats Dricus, unfortunately, we're probably going to have a situation where, Robert Whittaker and Izzy maybe get matched up for a third time, which I don't think anybody wants to see. But, Dricus Du Plessis did call for that fight with Izzy, and it does make sense. But the funny thing is, so we've kind of got like a little triangle going on here where you have Sean's calling for a rematch against Dricus, which I think that is the right move just from a fan perspective, from a sport perspective. I think he's the most deserving of it right now. And he did make the point that, when Izzy got finished by Periera, he was given an immediate rematch. And Sean Strickland said that, I wasn't finished and it was a split decision loss, but I wasn't given a rematch. Make it make sense, right? I will say that in Izzy's defense, he had been the reigning champion of the middleweight division for years at that point, right? So to give him the immediate rematch, kind of made sense from that perspective. Whereas like Sean, he won the belt off of Izzy and he couldn't defend it a single time. Again, like I thought he won, a lot of people thought he won, but that's what the narrative is, right? So that argument doesn't really work, but it does work in the sense that it was a split decision loss. One judge thought that he had won. The whole, like the media, everybody across the board was split on who won. And so, yeah, I do think he's most deserving, but I don't think the UFC is going to give him that rematch. Just because of the fact that, like, he's a menace, right? He's a menace to sponsors. He's a menace to the business side of things. Whereas someone like Dricus, someone like Izzy, someone like Robert Whittaker, someone like even Chimaev is probably a better face of the middleweight division than Sean Strickland, unfortunately. Which, like, that sucks for fans, for people who like him. But the reality is, I think that's the way that they're gonna go. So the question is kind of, because like I said, unless something crazy happens, I don't think Sean Strickland's getting to fight for a title, at least not right now. He's probably going to have to beat somebody in relatively short order in order to do that. And so who is that person? Like I was saying, I think what they do is they put Izzy versus Dricus, right? Dricus called for that fight. Funnily enough, on a podcast I saw Izzy do, he was calling for Sean, and Sean's calling for Dricus, so they're kind of all calling for each other, but none of them is fighting anyone. And then you've got Robert Whittaker, who just beat Paulo Costa. So he's sort of in there as part of the conversation. But again, you have Izzy, who's beaten him twice. You had Dricus, who stopped him. So really, the only guy he can fight that makes sense is Sean Strickland. So maybe you do a title eliminator between the two of them, and then you have Izzy fight Dricus. But again, if Robert Whittaker wins, does he fight get another fight for the title? And then you have conversations about what do you do with Paulo Costa? What do you do with Khamzat Chimaev? He's supposed to fight at some point, and I'm wondering if, like I said, they're waiting on some news about him to see where he fits in all this, because I know they wanted to kind of fast track him to a title, but the guy is so unbusy, and it's Ramadan right now, so I get what's happening there, but even still, there's been no news since basically UFC 294, right? And we're coming up on UFC 300, so we're talking 6 months now, and no news on when he's fighting next, and no real news on when Islam is fighting next, right? So, which that's neither here nor there. So, but the question is, where do they go from here? What is Sean Strickland going to do? Because, if I'm the UFC, we definitely don't want him as champion, but that's the fight the fans want. That'll probably sell the most pay-per-views, but again, it's not sponsorship friendly. So that's kind of where I'm at right now, is that unless Sean Strickland does something where it makes him undeniable, he's probably not getting back in that title contention. Dricus has said he wants Izzy. So the way I see it, he's probably going to have to fight Robert Whittaker before he gets back in there, or maybe they throw Khamzat Chimaev right in there against Strickland, hoping that Chimaev taps him out and makes him lose. And then if that's the case, then Chimaev will be next in line for the title. That's kind of the way I see it going, and my guess right now is what they're probably going to do. Whoever Chimaev fights next, whoever fights next at the middleweight division, maybe that's going to be booked for UFC Saudi Arabia. Maybe they do Strickland versus Chimaev there. I don't really know. I know they were talking about maybe doing Paulo Costa there again. I'm not really sure, but I can almost guarantee you that I don't see a scenario where Strickland is fighting for a title anytime soon. If you've made it this far, I appreciate you. If you wouldn't mind hitting the likes button and the subscribe button, it helps with the algorithm, helps grow the channel, and I want to thank you. Have a great day.